that is the best way to tell your story, whether it be in an interview or whether it be in, on a caption on Instagram when you're trying to connect to your audience of the different experiences that got you here and made you who you are. What's up, baddies? I'm Rima, and you are now tuned in to The Remix, where being overbooked is overrated and simple businesses are sexy. Today, we're going to talk all about storytelling. We're going to talk about how to tell your personal story, and we'll give a couple tips as well on just public speaking in general, because I get a lot of inquiries on how I developed my skills speaking publicly. And I just want to say first and foremost that I used to hate speaking, believe it or not. I felt as though I was much more articulate and I could really download my thoughts on paper a lot better than I could just blabbing my mouth. And it's something that I actually had to work on a lot, because I started my career in the classroom. I taught high school English. In order to engage my students, I needed to speak in a way that was engaging and concise, straight to the point. And I really struggled feeling smart when I spoke out loud. And while I was able to truly develop those skills, or at least the foundation of those skills in the classroom, one thing that I had not yet mastered was how to tell my story in a way that was really concise, clear, and most importantly, impactful to the person I was speaking to. I have to shout out my MBA program, the Michigan Ross School of Business, for really teaching me how to tell my story. So I'll tell you a little bit about how I learned that, and then I'll get into some tips on how you can start telling your story in a way that is magnetic to the right audience. So one of the first things that they taught us in business school, and by the way, if you are considering B-School at all, I have a couple videos that you should check out after this video on, what led to my decision and the pros and cons of going to B-School. So definitely check that out at the end of this video. One of the first things that I learned at Ross was how to craft what they called the Odyssey. And essentially the Odyssey is a framework that we used at Ross to speak to recruiters in order to land our dream internship or dream job. And essentially it gave me a tool to take every single experience I'd had in my life and condense it down to 2 minutes, which sounds crazy, right? Because it's like, how can I fit all of these crazy things that I've been through in 2 minutes? And trust me, you can. I think I even brought it down to 1.5 minutes. And now if you challenge me, I could probably do it in 30 seconds because of the tools that I'm about to teach you today. So the way that I was able to boil my story down to 2 minutes or less in a way that was impactful is, number one, always and forever, know your audience. Your story will literally be different from audience to audience. And I'm not saying that everything in your story is going to be different, but there will be pieces that are relevant to some audiences and pieces that are not relevant to that same audience that you'll need to remove. I literally had 5 different sheets on Google, like Google Sheets, depending on who I am talking to. Currently in my business, I have 2 different target audiences that I speak to, and I talk about different things, and I have different content pillars based on who that audience is. And that is all about being humble enough to not think about what I want to say. What does Rima want people to know? No, I think about, what does this person in front of me care about? So if I were in front of a Facebook person for a content strategy position, I'm going to talk about my experiences curating content strategy for the Dearborn Girl podcast. That is going to make its way into my story because it is a very relevant experience. And we'll get into that in a second. We'll get into how to think of relevant or irrelevant experiences. Whereas if I'm maybe talking to a nonprofit for charter schools, I am going to definitely hit on my experiences in the classroom. I'm not going to add both of those experiences just because they're 2 experiences I had and I want to talk about them. No, I'm going to use the experiences that are relevant to the audience. So step 1 is to really be inquisitive about, who am I talking to and what are their values? What do they want to know? What do they want to see in someone that they're talking to? Step number 2 is to write a list of the experiences that you've had. Write a list of any. It's kind of like, look at your resume and list out the interesting or noteworthy experiences that you've had in your life, whether personal or professional. And based on the audience that you are talking to, I want you to circle the experiences that are relevant. And even go so far as to cross off the ones that are irrelevant, just to give yourself some discipline that you should not be focusing on those in a conversation with X audience. And so if you are someone, for example, who is looking for a job and you are recruiting with 2 different companies with very different values and different skill sets, then the things that you circle for each audience will be different. So you can create a column for your audience and kind of bring the stories under it that are relevant. If you are a business person like me, who has 2 separate audiences that don't really overlap, then you'll want to think of the experiences that are relevant per audience. Let's say you're someone giving a speech and you want to repurpose a speech from organization to org that is hiring you to speak. Let's say you're getting hired by a university who has a graduation ceremony for their undergraduate class, but then you want to repurpose that same speech and deliver it to a room of executives. There will be different stories that come about in that speech to really hit on and be impactful for the various audiences. So step number 2 would be to circle the stories, write them down and circle the stories that are relevant for your audience. Last but not least, step number 3 would be to find a unifying theme in your story. And you want to make that theme kind of like the thread that gets woven from experience to experience to experience. And here's where the story really starts to come together. So a trick here, a pro tip here, is to pick a theme that is going to be very relevant or impressive to your target audience. So if we stay with the example of a recruiter, and this is someone who is hiring for a really fast-paced position in a startup, and you look at all the different experiences that you have, there are several themes that could come up in those experiences. Maybe one theme is that you are creative. Maybe one theme is that you're someone who works well with others. Another theme could be that you're fast on your feet, you're quick on your feet. If that is a fast-paced environment, you'll probably want to pick the last theme, that you're someone who's quick on your feet, you're flexible. And so the themes that you're not just going to be talking about, yeah, I was a teacher and I had a lot of students and it was great. No, you're going to bring that story to life by talking about how quick on your feet you were without saying that. It's always better to show versus tell. So you'll say, I began my career as an English teacher, and I found out the night before I entered the classroom that I would be teaching 11th grade. So with no time to prepare lessons or curriculum, I had to get in front of my students and quickly learn what it is that they needed to know and what it is that would engage them. And overnight, I was able to craft a highly effective curriculum that eventually led my classroom in 1 year to be one of the top 5 classrooms in the United States for teaching and learning. That's actually a true story for me. So what you hear from that story is that I was quick with it. I had limited resources and I just was able to create something crazy out of that. Now here's where it gets beautiful. Now that you have selected the stories that are gonna make the final cut to this person that you're speaking to, you weave these stories together through your theme and by having transitional statements. So you'll say something to the effect of, teaching taught me that while I loved being in front of my students every day, I really wanted to expand my impact to more students. And this led me to pursue a career with the University of Michigan, where I was delivering instruction to 500 students in the Metro Detroit area. Now you can see how it's like I collect something from this experience and I hop into the next one and I do my whole theme situation in that next one. And this taught me that I really want business skills. And so I applied to the University of Michigan. I hop into the next story. From the schools that I applied to, I ultimately chose to go to the Ross School of Business because of the hands-on learning that I knew would help me build my business. And then I hop into the next experience. So this seems jumbled right now, but when you get it all on paper and you start reciting it, it becomes this free-flowing, beautiful narrative that really hits home on a strong theme, does not waste anyone's time because you are not talking about experiences that will be irrelevant to the person you are in front of, And most importantly, it kind of reads like a story of I went here and then I learned this and then I went, so that brought me here. And then I went here and then I picked this up and that brought me here. And it's kind of like you're climbing this ladder of success and of personal discovery and understanding what it is that you want. So the ultimate goal with storytelling is to show people what made you the person that you are standing before them today. And you might even want to tease in a sentence or two of where you're going or looking ahead. And that is the best way to tell your story, whether it be in an interview or whether it be in, on a caption on Instagram when you're trying to connect to your audience of the different experiences that got you here and made you who you are. I just want you to know that it might seem uncomfortable. And I know for me, when I was in all of these different interviews and I did my Odyssey, that 90-second to 2-minute version of my story, I'm like, do they really want to sit and listen to this? Like, do they really want to sit and listen to me talk about my whole life in 2 minutes? But the beauty is that when you craft it the way that I've basically walked you through, it doesn't feel like this long monologue. It feels like this movie. It feels like they're like literally watching your life as a 2-minute movie. So if you've done it right, the person on the receiving end should feel excited and should feel like, wow. And by the end of it, they should have a greater appreciation of your values and the experiences that led you to be who you are. And they should feel enthusiastic about taking the next step with you, whether that be hiring you for a job or working with you in your business. So I really hope that helps you start to think of how you can declutter your story, pick the most prominent themes and most prominent experiences based always on who you are talking to. I want to reiterate not to make the mistake of thinking about what you want to say. Look at your story when you're done with it and ask yourself, is this what I want to tell them? Or is this what they want to hear from me? And you should always make sure that your story is something that they want to hear from you, because that is going to be the most impactful story at the end of the day. Let me know below if this is something that you're working on. Are you working on your story? Are you interviewing? Are you, giving speeches? What is it that this story is going to help you do moving forward? So thank you so much for watching and tune in again next time.